What kind of jealousy becomes strong enough to kill your own brother? Not over land, not over power, not over survival, but over acceptance. Long before kingdoms existed, before wars were written into history, before humanity built its first cities, two brothers stood before God with offerings in their hands, and only one walked away accepted. The other walked away carrying something far more dangerous: resentment. The world was still young. Humanity had barely begun stretching beyond the shadow of Eden. Adam and Eve had already seen paradise lost. They had watched the ground become harder, life become heavier, and death enter the human story for the very first time. Their children inherited that world, not the garden, but the aftermath of it. And among those children were two brothers, Cain and Abel. Cain worked the soil. Day after day, his hands pressed into cursed ground, pulling food from earth that no longer yielded easily. Abel became a keeper of flocks, quiet fields, moving herds, the rhythm of animals instead of dirt and stone. Two brothers, two lives, two offerings soon to be placed before God. At this point in human history, offerings were one of the few ways mankind expressed devotion. There was no temple, no priesthood, no written law, only obedience, faith, and the condition of the human heart. Cain gathered produce from his fields, fruit from the ground he cultivated. Abel searched through his flock carefully until he found something different: the firstborn, a fat lamb, the purest he possessed. And together, the brothers brought their offerings before God. Then they waited. Silence filled the space between heaven and earth. And then something happened. Smoke rose upward from Abel's offering, accepted. But Cain's offering remained untouched. No fire, no sign, no response. And in a single moment, the balance between the brothers changed forever. Cain stared at what had happened. His younger brother had received what he himself wanted most: God's approval. And something dark began forming quietly inside him. Not grief, not reflection, jealousy, the kind that grows silently before it destroys loudly. God saw the change immediately: the fallen expression, the wounded pride, the anger Cain tried to hide. And God asked him, "Why are you angry? Why has your face fallen?" But Cain did not seek understanding. He did not ask why Abel's offering had been accepted. He did not examine his own heart. Instead, he turned inward, and there resentment began taking root. Then came one of the earliest warnings ever given to humanity. God spoke directly to Cain. "If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." The warning was clear. Cain still had a choice. The story had not yet become tragedy. He could still master the anger before it mastered him. But jealousy does something dangerous to the human mind. It turns another person's blessing into personal humiliation. And slowly, Abel stopped looking like a brother in Cain's eyes. He became a reminder, a living symbol of rejection. Cain no longer cared about pleasing God. Now he wanted something else: revenge. Not against Abel alone, but against what Abel represented. Every kindness from his brother began to feel offensive. Every innocent conversation irritated him, and Abel likely never understood why. Because hatred rarely announces itself in the beginning. It grows quietly, especially when pride feeds it in silence. Then, one day, Cain asked Abel to walk with him into the fields, far from home, far from witnesses, and somewhere beneath the open sky. Human history was about to witness something it had never seen before: a brother preparing to spill the blood of his own brother. The day did not begin like a tragedy. There were no storms, no warnings in the sky, no sign that humanity was standing at the edge of something irreversible. Cain approached Abel and asked him to walk into the fields with him, and Abel agreed without hesitation. That detail matters, because Abel still trusted his brother, the same brother who had grown colder, quieter, more distant after the offering. Yet Abel walked beside him anyway, talking as brothers do, unaware that jealousy had already made its decision. As they moved farther from home, the silence between them began to change. Cain had already crossed the real line long before entering the field. The murder did not begin with a weapon. It began when he refused to master the hatred growing inside him. God had warned him. Sin was crouching at the door, but Cain had opened it willingly, and now the resentment inside him demanded action. Because unchecked jealousy never stays still. It eventually wants destruction. When they reached the field, Cain stopped walking. The open land stretched around them. No witnesses, no parents nearby, only earth, skies, and two brothers standing alone. Then Cain finally revealed what had been forming inside him. "I am going to kill you." Abel looked at him in confusion, at first perhaps not fully understanding, because there had never been murder before. Humanity did not yet have language for this kind of betrayal, but when Abel saw his brother's face, he understood the danger was real, and still, he answered with restraint, "If you raise your hand to kill me, I will not raise my hand to kill you. Indeed, I fear God." But Cain was no longer listening. Reason could not reach him anymore. Neither could mercy. In that moment, anger became action, and Cain killed his brother. The first human death caused not by accident, not by survival, not by nature, but by hatred. The earth drank innocent blood for the first time, and humanity crossed a boundary it could never uncross. Then came silence. No celebration, no satisfaction, no victory, only stillness. The birds seemed absent. The wind felt empty, and Cain stood over the body of the brother who had once walked beside him. This is the terrifying reality of sin. It promises release, but delivers emptiness. The jealousy that had burned so intensely inside Cain suddenly faced its outcome, and the outcome could not be undone. Then came the voice, "Where is your brother Abel?" The question was not asked because God lacked knowledge. It was an invitation, a final opportunity for Cain to confront what he had done. But Cain answered coldly, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And with those words, humanity revealed another fracture. Not only violence, but denial. But nothing remained hidden, because the earth itself had become a witness. And God answered, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Cain understood then that some acts never stay buried. Some sins enter the world so deeply, they echo beyond the moment they were committed. The field where Abel died had become more than soil. It had become testimony. Judgment followed. The ground Cain once worked would now resist him. The earth itself would no longer yield its strength easily to his hands. And Cain would become something humanity had never seen before. A wanderer, restless, disconnected, unable to escape what he carried inside himself. The punishment mirrored the crime. He had taken life, and now he would spend his own life carrying the weight of that act everywhere he went. But Cain's story did not end in the field, because, strangely, God did not take his life. Instead, the first murderer in human history was forced to keep living, and what Cain built afterward would shape the future of humanity itself.